My name is Tim Armstrong. I'm going to be talking today about some research that Dr. Cheyenne Lahiri and 5 undergraduate students at Adams State University and myself conducted up in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains from 2017 to 2020. The San Luis Valley was initially settled by Europeans when the Spanish moved up from New Mexico in the 1600s. But the bulk of European settlement, the real big push, came in mid-1800s with the discovery of gold in the Denver area. And mining left us with some of Colorado's most iconic images. This is the Crystal Mill site. Many of our ski towns today were originally mining towns, but mining also left us with a legacy of abandoned mines, tens of thousands of them, of which not even half have been remediated. Every one of these green dots is an abandoned mine, and actually there are many more that were missed in these surveys. These mines continue to raise concerns about human safety. They are incredibly dangerous places to visit. And in 2015, when the Gold King mine blew out and released heavy metals into the Alamosa River, that raised more concerns. There are also concerns about a disease that affects bats that roost in caves and mines that is gradually spreading westward. That can be spread from humans entering mines or caves and then picking this virus up on their shoes or clothing and then transferring it to new areas. This disease has not been detected in Colorado yet, but it is spreading westward and it is all around us. So all of these different concerns have raised calls for these mines to be gated or plugged to keep people out of them. We know that they provide important habitat for bats. In fact, the largest bat colony that we know of in Colorado is in the northern San Luis Valley in the Orient Mine. But the thing we don't know before we started this research was, are other animals using these mines as well? So I was out with a former student. We were hiking in the Sangres looking for tracks in the winter, and he mentioned to me that he had seen a bear leaving a mine. He had a remote trail camera up, and he had seen this bear, and so it got me to wondering, how common is that? So I emailed the different folks, colleagues around the valley, asked them if they knew anything about this, and Andrew Valdez up at the Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve sent me these images from a survey that they had done in one of their mines in the park with a dead mountain lion or puma and black bear, both in the same mine, both dead from unknown causes. So that indicated to me that yes, in fact, there were animals using these abandoned mines, and that then started this project. So in addition to our original very basic question, are other animals other than bats using these mines, we wondered, does visitation vary seasonally? Are these animals entering the mines like that dead mountain lion and black bear? Are some mines visited more than others? And are some species visiting mines more frequently? So we chose to work in the northern Sangre de Cristo Mountains. This area contains hundreds of abandoned mines. Crestone was really the center of mining in the western side of the Sangre de Cristos. Here you can see the dune field in the park right about in the middle of the image, and mines that we monitored throughout the range. We monitored 50 mines total with remote trail cameras to minimize our impact. We monitored for 2 years to gather some baseline data. We developed a model, and then we used the 3rd year to test our model. So, our first question, are wildlife visiting these mines? Absolutely. Lots of different things we observed at these mines. We decided to focus on carnivores. They're a very interest to the general population. They're important ecologically, and so that was really where we focused. This is a frequency histogram showing monthly visitation rates. And you can see that many mines had very low visitation rates, and 4 had no visits. We didn't observe anything visiting the mines at all, but some of them had animals moving in and out, and these are all just carnivores fairly frequently. So our second question was, does the visitation vary seasonally? So the first year of monitoring, this was 2017-18, this was one of our driest years recently in the last 5. And the black line you can see indicates the average monthly low temperature. And you can see that visitation peaked in November through January, driven really by the animals shown in green, which are ringtails, and then spotted skunks, which were shown in orange. Other animals, the black bears, you see they disappear in the winter when they went into their dens for hibernation, gray or gray fox, and then various other species. The second year of monitoring was one of the wetter years that we've had recently, a big snowfall year for the Sangres. Here you can see that the peak visitation extended really from November all the way into March. We had a very snowy spring that year, and that increase in January, February, and March is driven largely by the animals in blue, which are puma or mountain lion. So these are the species of carnivores that we observed, and our third question was, are they entering the mines? So of the 11 species we observed, 9 of them did enter the mine, 1 or more mines. There were 2 species that never entered a mine, and there were 3 species that we know occur in the Sangres that we did not observe at a mine at all, for reasons that I really cannot explain exactly. So using those same mines that we just looked at for seasonal visitation, we also asked the question, does mine entry vary seasonally? So for our first year, you can see again entries peaked from about January through April. And then in the second year of monitoring, you can see that peak in entries just increase all the way into May, when all of the animals we observed entered mines, although I will say that that is a relatively small sample. But the spring of that year was very snowy, and there were mountain lions in and out of these mines with kittens, which I'll show you in just a minute. We also asked, are some mines being visited more than others? So here's a figure breaking out visitation by elevation on the x-axis, and then different sized mines. So small portals were less than a meter, that's about waist high, excuse me. Medium-sized portal would be a mine that you could enter, average-sized adult could enter just by standing up, you could walk in. Some of the portals, the entrances to the mines were very tall, like upwards of 10 feet sometimes. And then in red are the vertical shafts, which we grouped differently for this figure. You can see that the highest visitation was in small and medium horizontal mines, and that visitation declined with the elevation of the mine. These mines range, the data are in meters, but they ranged from about 8,200 feet on the low end up to about 10,100 feet, the highest mine in this data set. Same question, are some being visited more than others? You can see that there were animals visiting the deep vertical shafts, but not entering, which would be shown in black here. Shallow vertical shafts, we had some. One in particular that was visited and entered all the time. And I'll show you some more data from that in a minute. And then you can see that the large, medium, and small mines, you can see the rate of visitation for each group, and then also the rate of entry shown in black, and the number of species that were observed for each of those groups. Our last question was, are some carnivores visiting mines more frequently than others? And you can see the number of mines that we observed carnivores at is on the x-axis, and the number of times they visited those mines is shown on the y-axis. And you can see that the pumas, or mountain lions, were our most frequent visitor. Bobcats, western spotted skunks, and a ringtail. If you don't know what those animals are, I'll show you some pictures of them in just a second. Were also frequent visitors. And then kind of on the low end, red fox, and then we saw just 2 long-tailed weasels in the first 2 years of monitoring. So to kind of dive into these data a little bit more deeply, we broke carnivores out by size categories. You can see that small carnivores were our most frequent visitors, but notice that the percentage of visits in which these different sized carnivores entered mines were really very comparable, right in the mid to high 40% range for each group. Visitation also differed by carnivore family, so we broke it out. You can see that the cats, the pumas and bobcats, were the most frequent visitors. Raccoons, we only saw 1 northern raccoon. All the rest of those visits were ringtails, which are in the raccoon family. Okay, so that's the end of our data. So now I want to talk about some of our other observations. So we'll start with the mine that had the highest visitation, was a mine in the Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve, and that high visitation was driven largely by these 2 animals, a western spotted skunk on the left and ringtails on the right. These animals appear to be staying in the mines periodically. They would come and go and stay and be in and out, in and out, and in and out for a few days. There were also rabbits that lived in this mine. There were various rodents that lived in this mine, and they were all somehow living together inside this mine. We also saw some interesting species interactions. So on the left, you can see a spotted skunk with the eye shine and a gray fox in a mine at the same time. I have no idea what these guys were doing in there. And then on the right, there's a gray fox outside of a different mine. And here comes a spotted skunk. And as it comes in, the gray fox leaves. So again, just some fascinating interactions that we saw. Pumas, we saw at several mines pairs of adult pumas that don't normally associate together unless they are mating or courting. And so these females may be staying in these mines during courtship. We're not exactly sure what was going on there, but it raises an interesting possibility. We also observed females of different carnivores that visited and entered mines. Gray fox on the left, a female with 1 young leaving a mine, and then on the right, 2 bear cubs looking into a vertical shaft. You can see the mother's shadow on the far left of that image. The spring of that second year of monitoring, when we saw lots and lots of visitation, was driven by female pumas with young that entered mines. Now, when we had a situation like this, we counted each individual as a separate visit. And we had a female in February of 19 visit a mine in the park with 3 kittens, of which you can see 2 of the kittens on the left. Notice their size. They're spotted. They're still pretty young. And then on the right, a female puma visited the same mine with 3 kittens, much larger, nearly full-grown, a year later. May have been the same cat, may not. We're not sure. We couldn't really identify most of these animals as individuals. Bobcats maybe, but these mountain lions don't have any spotting. There's no real patterning on them, so they're hard to identify. But again, may have been the same female coming back with those same 3 kittens. We also observed a variety of carnivores scent marking or sniffing what may have been scents left by other carnivores at these mines. This behaviors have been observed up in the carnivore community up in Yellowstone National Park, where the full range of carnivores visit the same scent posts, and they all scent, sniff, and mark, everything ranging from weasels all the way to grizzly bears. So these mines may be a kind of a communal scent post. You can see on the left a bobcat sniffing a framing member of a mine, and then on the right you can see a bobcat scent marking at a mine. This mine, you can see this puma coming up, and the cat came up and sniffed a rock face. The mine itself, the portal is just a little to the left of center, that dark area. So this cat came up and sniffed this rock. It was at 9:11 a.m. on 9/11/2017. We had just begun this study. We've been monitoring the mine for a few months. 24 minutes later, a bear comes up to the same mine, sniffs the same exact rock. We don't know why, we don't know what they were sniffing, but again, some indication that these may be used as communal scent posts. Some mines acted as seed traps. This is a mine, this was the one shallow vertical shaft, less than a meter. Then they acted as seed traps. So many of these mines were in piñon juniper habitat, and as you may know, piñon seeds are a very important food for many animals, including humans here in the valley. And so the piñon seeds would fall into these mines, which would then attract birds and other rodents, and then we think attract carnivores. Every mine had resident rodents. These are 2 pack rats fighting in a mine that they filled with conifer cones. But there were a lot of rodents. Pack rats, mice, voles, you name it, a lot of different rodents in these mines. The other thing that we did not expect was that some mines appear to be sources of minerals, what we would call a mineral lick or a salt lick. You can see on the left a bighorn down on its knees eating dirt from around the mine. But these bighorn were in and out of this mine. This was the mine with the most frequent visitation, although there were other mines in the same drainage where bighorn also entered routinely and visited and entered. Here's a small group. They would spend a day, and individuals would go in and out of this mine, which kind of freaked me out. As a prey animal, I wouldn't necessarily want to enter this mine. And when you know what else was going in and out of that mine, it's even more surprising, because this is the same mine with a puma entering it, which is a major predator of these bighorn. Here it is coming out in the daytime. So not only were these bighorn entering this mine, but so were mountain lions. We never saw any predation at any of the mines, but they must smell like cat when you go in there. So we were really quite surprised that these bighorn were going in and out of this mine. So all of our research questions, are animals using these mines? All of them, the answers to all of these were yes, basically. The visitation at individual mines did not vary significantly, but it was quite variable. So, based on our first 2 years of monitoring, we built a model, and what this model shows is that in the Sangres, carnivores were most likely to visit a small, like waist-high or less, horizontal mine at relatively low elevation in dense piñon juniper woodlands. So that's where we saw the highest visitation. Our third year of the study, we tested our model. We used mines in these groups. These are mining claims that were marked on a map. And so we put cameras at multiple mines that were close by to see if carnivores were visiting them in succession as they moved across the landscape. And you can see that our correlations were relatively weak. The model, although it had great predictive power, here it just didn't correlate well with visitation. We looked at 4 different aspects of mines that were identified as significant in our model: elevation, the aspect, the bearing, the compass bearing that the mine opened to, portal size, and then the percent tree cover. But none of our correlations were real strong. So, based on our observations, we think that wildlife appear to be using these mines for these different reasons, although we never really knew what was going on in the mines. We could not observe, we didn't enter these mines, we didn't have any cameras inside them, and so we really don't know what was going on in the mines. So this is really at some level speculation, but based on the seasonal pattern and the visitation by the bighorn, we think that these are pretty accurate guesses. Now, humans. We chose to work in the sangres because we thought that we would have less problems with people disturbing our cameras. But we saw people in surprising places. Hunters, we expected. People visiting at night, which we did not expect. People entering mines, which I would not recommend. And even people with children, allowing their children to enter a mine. Those kids are playing on a portion of the mine that collapsed. And that is why you don't want to go in these mines. This is a mine that completely collapsed with these huge boulders on top of it. So these things are extraordinarily dangerous. So our conclusions and management recommendations: if managers have mines that need to be gated for human safety, which is always going to take precedent, we would just recommend that they monitor those mines with a trail camera for 1 year before gating or closing to see what other species might be affected. We didn't see any carnivores entering these deep vertical shafts, which arguably are the most dangerous mines out there. Some of them are sheer-sided, some of them are full of water, and they are just treacherous if you were to ever fall in one. But the mines could be monitored, and we really encourage managers to do that. These are the folks who supported this research, and these are the people who helped us check cameras, set cameras. We had quite a few people who went out with us at various times, commented on various drafts of a manuscript that is in press in the Journal of Wildlife Management that will be coming out this spring. But lots of different people helped with this research. And although climbing around in the sangres for 3 years nearly killed me, it also kept me in great shape, and was really kind of a labor of love. So thank you very much for listening.